Welcome to the Rediscover Radiance podcast. Rediscover Radiance is a transformative podcast designed for corporate professionals who are embarking on a journey of self-reclamation. We believe that within each of us lies a radiant core, a place of authenticity, resilience, and purpose. Sometimes life's challenges can dim our inner light. Our mission, to help you reignite it. Let's meet your hosts. Lizzie Garcia, the curious guide, the seeker who asks the tough questions. Karen Great, the strength-based guide, the compassionate seeker who dives into the heart of matters. Together, they are on a mission to inspire you to reclaim your self-worth and glow with brilliance. Why rediscover radiance? Because you deserve to shine. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's embark on this radiant journey together. Remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your purpose awaits.
Hey everyone, welcome to our third episode of Rediscover Radiance. Today I'm super excited to talk about a topic that I'm sure all of us have been impacted by or have went through or have maybe been a support system for someone who was close to us that was going through a similar situation. And so today we're going to be talking about empowered shifts. And by shift, we mean there's a shift either in your external situation or shift within you, and navigating disingenuous environments. So disingenuous environments are environments where you feel that perhaps there is a bit of a bait and switch that's going on in the environment. Maybe you're being told one thing, but come to find out, something else is going on or something else is happening. A disingenuous environment could be one in which you just feel like you can't be your authentic self. Maybe you feel that you're silenced in some sort of way. Maybe you feel that your opinions, your experience are not being valued within that environment. Also, a disingenuous environment could just be one in which you have been pretending to be someone else. Maybe you have been navigating that environment by just trying to emanate what you're seeing from other people, right? You're seeing how other people are being successful in that environment, and maybe you're exemplifying that and you're living that out because you want to be successful like those other people, and you find yourself in a disingenuous environment as a result. So you can really insert whatever your experience is or what that disingenuous environment means to you. But the reality of it is that from time to time, we can find ourselves in a situation where we're not able to be our authentic selves. We're not able to really communicate fully. And it leaves us with feeling burnout. It leaves us with feeling that we don't know how to move forward, that we're in a period of our lives where we're feeling stuck, or we're feeling like, how do I go? Where do I go from here? You feel misunderstood also when you're in that place. And so today we really want to talk about this topic and just, really see from even our viewers, what are some things that you've done to kind of dig yourself out of this situation? How have you moved forward? How have you rediscovered your radiance when you went through something like this? And so with that said, I will kick it over to Karen.
Well, thanks, Lizzie. This is such a topic that I think is starting to be talked about, but not something that is a consistent conversation in workplaces. And, workplaces are struggling with such big topics. In fact, I was just at the Gallup Summit last week in Omaha, cute little city, who would have thought, right? And when I was there, I had learned that there are so many people that are struggling with loneliness. It's actually the top concern with employees in the workplace right now is loneliness. And that hurts my soul. I think we talked a little bit about it in one of the other podcasts. And so, how do we protect ourselves from our light going dim? We know that we are unique beings. What the strengths research shows from Gallup, right? 1 in 34 million have the talents that you have in the order in which, the ranking order goes. And so, why do we stifle that, right? Why do we feel like we have to be disingenuous in our environment? Is it about fitting in? Is it belonging? That's a core human need. And there's just so many things that happen. And then the byproduct of that is feeling uncomfortable in your skin. And I thought it was interesting. I was reading a quick article from Korn Ferry last week, and the statistic was out of 400 executives, we're talking CEOs here, 71% felt imposter syndrome.
Wow.
So for our listeners or our viewers who don't really know what imposter syndrome is, the quick skinny on that is feeling like you're a fraud, like you don't have the qualifications or credentials to be doing the work that you're doing. And I think about that. I have fallen prey to it many a time. I am working my way through it now. Like I said, these layoffs that have happened since 2020, I'm not the exclusive party that have been the recipient of layoffs since the pandemic. And so that will really do a number on your confidence, on your abilities. But the funny thing is right, your abilities are always there. It's like, what kind of covers that self-worth? And so it kind of brings us to the topic of circles versus cages. I like to quote Miss Jennifer Gilman. She was our guest last week from functional medicine. She's a health coach. And I found that like it struck deep for me. And it was like, what is this about, right? Like, who are my people? Why do I feel like I need to stay in certain cages that are not productive for my mental health, that are not propelling my strengths forward, that are not doing the things that I know I need to have an alignment? I talk a lot about values in my work and missions and things of that nature. And when they're incongruent, you're going to get hodgepodge results, right? It's going to be very inconsistent. And so, I ask you guys, in the audience, right? What is it that is in your values, and what is it that's not congruent for you right now? Gallup's all about creating thriving workplaces through strengths. And like, what an awesome concept, right? To have a world of acceptance and purpose for everyone, and really recognizing what is unique and what valuable contribution people bring versus not, and just kind of trying to conform. So the idea of essence partners came up, right? We've heard of accountability partners. Of course, this is Rediscover Radiance, right? We've got to throw in, a little bit of essence to that, right? How do we make that sunlight stay, or at least get ourselves the warning signs of when that might start to dim? And I have several essence partners in my life that I'm so fortunate to have. My co-host here, Lizzie Garcia, has brought back my essence in a big way. She is a circle, not a cage for me. She is someone who I can speak freely and honestly with, and honesty is a core value of mine. So for me, when the emotions and the feelings and the thoughts going on in the workplace are not congruent to mine, I don't do well. Don't do well at all. And so I can freely share that with her. And I have my sister-in-law, even though she's not my in-law anymore, she's just my sister. Divorce can't separate us, right? We have been together for decades, and she really is my essence partner. We cheer each other on without sugarcoating situations. It's very important that you have honesty, and to have that honesty, you have to have a level of trust and knowing that someone's looking out for you and they're curious about you. What a gift, right? To have somebody who's actually curious about your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And then, of course, I have my dear friend, Allie, right? That is just amazing. She has been my essence partner for years. She is just one, we always say, is it someone who gets it or doesn't get it, right? And so that's how I define my essence partner. So you may want to just define what an essence partner is for you, and really, how do they clear the clouds for you? And how do they help you realize how much you shine? Because we forget that sometimes. So Lizzie,
Absolutely.
When we were discussing the episode, we talked a bit about, I think I was, again, you're my essence partner. I was kind of talking about, this idea of external validation. Mm-hmm. And, is it just innate in us as humans that we kind of seek that? when it goes too much, right? And my essence partner, Allie, says, right, nothing good lives in the extremes. And that is absolutely a fact. And so, you kind of talked about, well, our eyes, right? Like there's a little bit of science behind that. And so she starts Googling. And Lizzie, do you want to talk us a little bit about what Live Science had to say about kind of that external validation and how that correlates to our own eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. When we were talking about essence, and I think, Karen, you were sharing something about, something personal about, some things that you've struggled with in the past, which is, looking for that validation through other people's eyes. And when I thought about that, I was like, wait a minute. When we're talking about our essence, we're talking about our radiance, there is science that our body does emit light. And when we're looking to people to validate our inner light, right, through their eyes, the eye itself, it does not emit light, right? So when we were talking about that, it's like, wait a minute, scientifically speaking, light cannot come out of somebody's eyeball onto you to help you radiate, right? The eye only takes in that light, and it takes in the light in a way that it has to perceive the light. There's a dance that the physical eye has to do with the brain in order to understand what it is that you're seeing, what it is that you're looking at. And sometimes people, they just cannot perceive us the correct way. For whatever reason, they see us, we're shining brightly, we're doing our thing, we're living in our authenticity. But for whatever reason, that person, even though they're seeing the light that you have, their brain is not really able to interpret you and what they're looking at and what they're seeing. And so we take this internally, we can internalize that, we can take that as a rejection of, oh, this person cannot see the value that I'm bringing. This person is not really validating me. And we internalize that by saying, well, I must not be who I think I am, right? Going back to that imposter syndrome. It reminds me, kind of to put it in more of a real world, kind of context or real world situation. It reminds me at one point in my life, I was in a role where I was the first person to be in that role in that organization. And so, on paper and in the conversations coming into the organization, there was, there was a vision that had been communicated to me on what the organization was trying to do, what it was trying to achieve. And I was hired to fill that need. Now, unfortunately, that hiring committee and the people that went into hiring me in that particular part of the organization never shared that vision with the broader organization. Okay. And so when I came into the organization, I came as a part of a larger ecosystem. And as I'm reaching out, I'm connecting with leadership, I'm meeting employees, and I'm starting to talk about what it was I was brought there to do, my radiance, what it is that I'm coming here to contribute to that organization. It was very much rejected and devalued. Okay. And so it left me with a feeling of, man, I don't understand. I thought everything was so clear when I came into the organization. I was hired here to do this. But now that I'm having these conversations, I'm finding out that not only not only is there a different idea of what's gonna, what my radiance should even be, right? The actual value that I was bringing, the idea was so new to that organization that they just were not even really able to accept it or comprehend it or even begin to see or understand what I was saying. So I had two choices at that point in my career. I could either say, okay, nobody here, you're not able to see the value that I'm bringing, so I'm going to leave, right? Which is, I think that's kind of our fight or flight response that we have. The other option that I had in that situation was that I could how do I try to get them to see what I'm seeing, right? Even if they're not really able to understand my role or understand what I was brought here to do, how can I at least meet them where they are and try to help, bring them over? And so I decided to try to meet people where they were in that situation. And it required me going through that to have very strong essence partners in my life, because that's the harder road to take, is when people are not really able to see the value that we're bringing. Going through that journey to try to find, okay, where do we have mutual ground, and how can I get you to see what I'm seeing and what I'm trying to do? I can say that throughout that journey, there were some victories, there were some wins in terms of being able to articulate the value of the role that I was bringing into the organization. However, it wasn't like a complete sort of victory where I felt that, at the end of the day, that I was truly where I wanted to be in terms of feeling that my role was valued within that organization. And so I say that it's always a journey, and there's not ever like a right answer for what you're going to do in any particular situation. But having strong essence partners, like we were saying, having a circle and not a cage, if you are wanting to stick it out, if you need to stick it out, maybe you're a single mom, or you have something going on in your life where you're not able to just walk away from that environment. It does require you to have to recalibrate and kind of re-strategize around, okay, even though I'm not where I want to be, because I'm not feeling that I'm not seeing this being reciprocated between myself and this organization. I'm not seeing what I'm putting in. I'm not seeing a return on investment on what I'm putting into this organization. It does sometimes feel like you get stuck. And so that's where I really go back to not internalizing that situation, because if you internalize a situation like that, it can turn to trauma, right? Whenever we internalize something that's outside of our control, we kind of open ourselves up. At least this is what I've learned in my experience. I've opened myself up to that becoming a trauma for me. And I don't want to it's not fair to me to take that on when it's not something that I'm doing. It's just a perception that either one person or a group of people has. The other thing is that, when we're talking about circle versus cage, understanding what's the difference between the two is very important. Understanding what is constructive feedback versus what is destructive feedback in your situation is really important. Now, you don't want somebody selling you a dream. You want your team to be rooted in reality, your essence team. But it is important that you understand the difference between the two, because as we were also talking about in our podcast last week, you can find yourself in a situation where people mean well in the advice that they're giving you, but it's actually counterintuitive to what is needed in that situation for your own growth. So it's a complete journey, and that's my experience. And I always want to be authentic with you guys. And it's never like and I lived happily ever after. At the end, right? It's always like, it's a journey, and you learn things around the way. And, maybe next time I get in a situation like that, after I've learned some things, I may say, it's healthier for me to walk away from this situation, if I ever found myself in that situation again. But it's not always that easy, right? It's not always that easy.
Yeah. Wow, that's gold, Lizzie. Thank you for sharing your experiences and knowing that, right? It's not always a happily ever after, yet, we either win in cases, right? If we stick it out and we kind of turn it around, it reminds me of my grade school days, going home, watching those ABC afternoon specials, right? The more you know, and like the underdog comes out and tackles a big social issue. I'm like, I blame that for who I am today, right? Like, I don't know if that was part of it or not, but I've always had like a desire to go into, whether it be a toxic work environment or just a disorganized environment, and just help be a fixer and a morale getter, and turn the ship around. And I can say I've had both experiences. When I was working for behavioral health, right, I had an amazing HR director at the time, a VP really, and she just assembled the team so well together and complemented what we did, because again, we always think, well, I want to go with like-minded people, right? Like that's my comfort zone. Think about it as your strength zone, right? Like I adore these people, and we are like 10 years later, I'm still very close with these individuals. And we just were able to be those kind of connect points to turn that ship around, because we had the buy-in from the CEO all the way through. We started walking the talk. We communicated frequently, early and often. We put in new plans. And then, even the naysayers after time, the consistency that they saw turned it around, And so when I think about that experience compared to some others, it's the belief, right, that it can be done. It's really turning it around by the consistency and your team. You might have different thoughts, you might have different ideas, trusting in that and kind of seeing through the process, making pivotal changes when needed, right? Giving time for things to work. Conversely, like you, Lizzie, one of my employers, they were super excited about me coming in. I was super excited about coming in, all great intentions in the beginning. And, I pride myself on being influential. What did I know, right? In comes imposter syndrome when I can't turn the ship around. And, and it's funny because, again, I'm going for the underdog, and I'm killing myself, for lack of a better word, right? And I'm very proud of what I was able to accomplish with that, with my group of 10. And we were turning it around, and we were like right at the tip, right? And then it's like, people get scared. And it's like, oh no, we got to go back. We got to retreat to where we were. And, I remember telling my leader at the time, the VP of HR, it's like, but we're right at the top of the hill. Like, what kind of message does this send? And so, that what I learned from that is that no matter how good you are or how committed you are, you can get completely lost in that, and not in a good way, because then it's contingent on the outcome. And so when, the previous example was we were all winning together, that's an exciting feeling. That's resume building. That's amazing, right? And then when you have the opposite situation, you feel personally like a failure. And it's like, you either win or you learn, as a mentor, John Maxwell, would say, right? Like you take those experiences, and it's like, again, is this something that is personally mine? No, I'm the same person that I was in the other role. It's, where's my essence partners, right? Are we on the same track? Are we going towards the same thing? So, it really leads to, how do you build yourself up when you're in one of those situations? Well, it's a fundamental shift, right? It's really recognizing, guess what? It's you, not them. And that was a really bitter pill for me to swallow, right? Because change does come from within. And so really analyzing and kind of feeling where I'm in the moment, and like kind of tracing back my steps, like, what is this really tied to? I let me consult my essence partner or my coach or whoever. Sometimes, essence partners are great because they're personal, right? Like you have some sort of connection with them. Coaches are great because they're neutral. They don't know the backstory and the history to add those biases, to maybe sugarcoat, even though it's not intentional. So, there's so many idioms out there, right? Like to know, like, where are you in this moment, right? Like, how are you acknowledging the funk, I like to call it?
Yeah.
It's one idiom is, right, like, it's not just a bad day. It's not just a bad day. It's not a bad life, right? It's just a bad day. Example of that, sorry. But I think you got the message. So sometimes, it can be a series of bad days or weeks or months or years, and you're just in this funk and you're like, what's going on? And so, for me, I'm actually celebrating 4 years of running my business this month. And so
congratulations.
Thank you. I couldn't believe it in 4 years, and it's like not a coincidence. It aligned with the pandemic.
Yeah.
But what that has taught me has been such a gift. Where I am today is nowhere near where I thought I would ever be in life. Sometimes, life paths put you on better paths than you had ever imagined yourself. So really being outside of your comfort zone, but never out of your strength zone is really important to kind of keep in mind, right? Staying kind of, positivity is just one that kind of keeps me through going through the funk, knowing that I'm kind of picking up corrections along the way, kind of leverage who you are. Sometimes you just need to sit in it. And I know that sounds like really weird, right? Like, because then there's that toxic positivity, right? Where it's like you're just, putting potpourri on things that don't smell so good. And that's maybe a short-term fix, but it's not a long-term solution. So really finding that path forward, and finding that value, and knowing that you can think of different alternatives, just like the eyes and the lens and the perspectives, right? We can't force our own beliefs or our conventions on other people, but we can sure listen and have some back and forth connections, connect with your essence partners, coaching, getting to know yourself, a lot of self-awareness in this process, and really just, again, recognizing the fruits that, for me, it's not just about, right, is everybody winning? You've got to pay attention to you too. And that's a character flaw that I am working on now, is that I have a tendency to get so enmeshed in someone else's success that if they're not successful, I internalize that. Like, what could I have done? What could I have done different? And it's like, logically, I know that's ridiculous. So I'm just wondering if anybody that's listening can empathize with that and feel that. And this really is just about knowing, right, who you are and why you're here. And so, Lizzie, how do you recenter, right, and kind of come back to your purpose?
Yeah. So it's always important whenever we're in a situation like this that we recenter on why we're there. Okay. So for me, in a situation where maybe I'm in a toxic environment, maybe the environment's not necessarily toxic, I'm just not feeling fulfilled, whatever that definition is for you. I have had to think about, who am I willing in my life? Who am I willing to make sacrifices for? So for me, as a mother and a wife, there are certain things that I was willing, like, okay, this isn't the ideal situation, but I'm willing, I have to stick this out, or I'm willing to, and changing our mindset instead of like, I have to more of like, I can stick this out because I'm doing this for my family, right? I'm doing this for them. I can do this for them, right? So just changing our mindset from I have to, or I can't, or whatever that is, whatever that negative is, to I can do this for them. Understanding, again, who are you going to make those sacrifices for? If the sacrifices should not be for someone that is not an investment. You don't feel like that's an investment long-term into your life, right? They're not in your circle. If, they're not a circle or a cage. They're some sort of indifferent third party, right? Those are not the right things that you make sacrifices for. You want to make sure that you're in that situation, and what's helping you to get through that is because you have an end result, that this current situation that you're in is going to help you get to where you want to be. Now, that only works if you have a vision on where you want to be, right? So I would say the most important thing to do when you're in a situation like this, and what I had to do, I had to create a vision okay, I'm living someone else's vision. I came in here for someone else's vision. What's my vision? What is my vision for myself outside of this role, this company? What's the vision that I have personally? Right. So I did something super cheesy, and I always recommend it. I created a vision board.
Yes.
It was actually very fun. And I made a whole activity out of it. I put it up and I put it in my office. I work from home, so it was easy to do that. And whenever I would start to feel discouraged, I would look at my board and I'll be like, okay, well, but this is why I'm here, right? So being able to recenter on why we're there, who we're there for, right? What's the long-term goal of being there? And then the second part of that would be coming up with a game plan for what's next, right? So if you're not happy in that environment, what is our plans to step into something that's we're gonna be able to feel more fulfilled? That sometimes when you go on that journey, you find out, oh, wait a minute, it's not my career. Maybe I'm using my career to fulfill me in areas of my life that it should not be. I should not be doing that, right? So sometimes when we go on that journey, we're like, wait a minute, it doesn't matter where I'm at. I'm gonna have the same problem because I'm not coming up with something that is for me that I have. We talked about that in our first podcast. We do all these initiatives at work, and that's great. But what's going to be our legacy, right? What are we going to leave? Nobody's going to know what we did at work. My children are never going to know what initiatives I worked on. They're never going to know my KPIs. Okay. They're never going to know that, right? So is there something outside of work that's going to bring you happiness? That could, be a hobby. That could be maybe, Karen's she loves to learn. She feels like she's winning when she's learning. So, for her, she likes to just go out and read books and go to conferences, and, that brings her fulfillment. So it's really for you to determine and define that, okay, what is going to fulfill me outside of work? Because that's very, very important. If you're somebody who's like, well, I just work. Well, you're just setting yourself up for failure because, you're not, what are you working for? Right. So that would be where I would, really encourage people. It is hard when, maybe you're the type of person you don't like to open up. Maybe when people ask you how things are going, people that are in your circle, in your essence group, maybe they ask you how you're doing, and maybe you haven't been forthcoming about, things are really hard right now. Or, maybe you feel like you're going to be a burden on people if you tell them or express to them that all is not going as you hope. I really encourage you to be vulnerable. People who are in your essence circle, they are there for you, right? They're there because they care about you, that they want to be a support to you. And if you find yourself really struggling to open up to them, number one, is that the right essence circle for you, right? Is that person the right essence circle partner for you? But if you are 100% certain in your heart that they are, I really encourage you to open up, because it can be so easy for us to be like, you know what, it's 5:00. Yeah. My laptop is closed up. I don't want to talk about it. I just want to move on. But then you're struggling and you're internalizing that. And remember, like I said, when I internalize things, it becomes a traumatic experience for me, right? So just make sure that you're opening up. I think that's the first step, because once you have a community around you and a support system, it makes it so much easier to get out of that imposter syndrome, because you're going to people who see your essence. That's why they're your essence partner. And it helps you to really refocus and recenter and just have someone to talk to. And I think that's a beautiful thing. Karen, I had a question from one of our listeners recently, and they were wanting to know, they don't have a big circle. They don't have a really an essence partner or anyone close to them right now. So they were looking and wanting to know, how do you go about getting a coach? It seems like it's like this mythical process. So if you could just shed some light for our listeners, because I think that's also important for people who don't have a close circle.
Absolutely. I am so fortunate to be and know so many amazing coaches. So if I can demystify that for you in about 3 minutes, happy to get on a discovery call with you. Again, no obligation, but that kind of speaks back to the statistics about loneliness, right?
Yeah.
And it talks to you about just that fear of rejection, or perhaps this person had some essence partners and it went south for some reason or situation, and I can empathize with that. I've had that with a couple of people with my life over the years. And so having a coach, a professional coach, is really there to support you, to be able to hear you, to extract what is in the good of you. And really, coaching is all about knowing that you're an amazing human being, and the resource and the essence is within you. And a coach is able to help bring that to light for you and make observations. So, if anyone's ever wanted to give coaching a try, I highly recommend it. I'm really here to help support. It's really part of my purpose is to really demystify coaching. It's honestly one of my biggest pet peeves. Again, I'm old enough to be in the workplace long enough to remember when coaching meant bad. Like, oh, I'm going to get a coaching at work. That usually didn't have a nice ending to it. So please know the level of coaching that we do is 100% confidential. We are going to be listening to you, counteracting. In fact, I have a very large hospital system that I'm working with right now. And even though the CEO is the sponsor, she well knows I don't communicate any of the logistics of what goes on inside those coaching sessions. So, that's one thing. And again, chemistry fit, right? Lizzie and I are very similar, and we're also very different. So I'm sure you're listening to this like, oh, I like Lizzie way better. Cool. I like Lizzie too. We both bring a different perspective. So, I'm happy to, after the discovery call, if I'm not your coach, I can find you a good coach. I've got plenty of people in my network that would be able to help there. And then, it's literally about that vulnerability and that opening up. I mean, that's why I shared that 71% stat of all CEOs also feel imposter syndrome. There's a sameness that's going on with us right now. And that fear that is keeping us down has to be really just recognized. I think about the fact that we are all replaceable, ... And that's okay. Took me a really long time to say that's okay part, because every time I kind of met what I perceived as a failure or a redirection, right? Because again, it's logistics, right? It's the way that you think about it. It's really set me up to where I look back and I'm like, that was really a gift. Thanks so much for that opportunity, because I took the lessons from it. I applied it differently. And I can tell you guys, 4 years later, I'm so happy doing what I do, and my purpose is aligned. My values are there. My number one value is honesty for myself and my clients. So I really love having that alignment. There's 2 4-letter words that I want to share with you guys, and it's not the one you're thinking of. But when you have a rejection, if it feels that way, or a redirection, again, framing of it, you can think from the mindset of fear, right? Because that's a natural, like Lizzie mentioned, right? The fight or flight syndrome, that's just biology, right? That's what happens to us. We think we're being attacked by lions back in our primal days. And so fear happens. And again, we just acknowledge that emotion, right? And we kind of work through the stages of it. Or we can immediately go to hope, or after some time, go to hope. That's another 4-letter word, right? Is what is this experience and opportunity guiding me to my next big move, right? What are some things that I can do to really put myself in a position to where I am in more alignment? Because when we're incongruent, y'all, it's not pretty. We are putting on masks. We are, having our cortisol levels blow up. We are just not who we are. And, I think a warning sign we talked about, like when your light starts to dim, Moms are great. I remember my mom when I was in one of my roles. I had been in it maybe 3 to 6 months only. And she goes, Karen, you are just not you. And what did my ego tell me? Oh, it's fine. It's fine because, I'm the turnaround dog, right? I'm going to make this, I'm an underdog, right? I'm going to turn this around. It's going to be good, right? I was so focused on getting that team right, whatever that looks like. That's my beliefs speaking highly, that I neglected myself. I neglected my warning signs. And I temporarily suffered for it. And now that I'm going back in retrospect, I had a lot of fear going into my own business. I had a lot of fear of, am I good enough? Am I qualified? I mean, come on. We all have our credentials. We have plenty of, experience to hang our hat on. You are good enough. You are qualified enough. And that might just be the fear talking. So listen to your mom, listen to your essence partners. If you don't have an essence partner, again, join groups, get networks, get some community around you. Again, sometimes I take for granted, it's just my personality type, right? I'm very open with a lot of people. And even though with Lizzie, I said, doing this podcast is just a different realm of vulnerability for me. I'm so used to being on the other end, to creating a safe space for others to be vulnerable. And of course, a coach's job, right, is I don't put my stuff on the coachee. So it works out really well for me. But on this, it's a little bit spotlighted differently. And again, the goal here is, can you resonate with anything that Lizzie and I are talking about? Can you adopt just one thing that you may think about differently, do differently, explore differently, to really let your radiance shine? Because the choice is yours. It's your life to live, right? We got to get comfortable with stretching our comfort zone, yet staying in our zone of strengths, because those are our superpowers. Those are things that help us be fulfilled and help us remember what our essence is all about. And really, what a gift to society. What a gift to life, right? People are happier, 3 times happier, in fact, got the research to show it, when people are operating in their strength zone. So really powerful stuff. I do wish each of you a wonderful journey of discovery and reflection and understanding. Because guess what? Even if at the end of the day, your knee-jerk response was fight or flight, and you were in fear mode, and you did the hard work and you got to hope, right? And you still decide to leave, right? That was the should I stay or should I go episode. There's no shame in that, because you were true to yourself. And you can't help anybody when you're not at optimal speed yourself. So take the time for you. You deserve it, and you are worthy. So Lizzie, is there any other final questions or comments that you want to pose to the group? I know in the chat, we'd love to hear when we post these, some of your aha moments, some tips and tools that, maybe we haven't mentioned here that work for you. Because again, it's like a light bulb moment. I know that, again, cliche, right? It's just really a light bulb moment. You can hear all the right things, but until you're at that state of readiness, it may or may not work. So, to your friend, right, who's curious about a coach, right? There's some criteria to get into coaching, right? I don't want to just take your money. I'll be very upfront. That's why I do a discovery call, I'm sensing you're not totally there yet. Or it could be really deep emotional scars, and I'm not a therapist. So, I'd happy to refer you and help you get the help that you need. But coaching is all about, I'm here. I'm not feeling XYZ, fulfilled with my role, doing enough to have self-care, or whatever the goal is that you're trying to accomplish, right? And then I'm serving as your accountability partner, right? I'm serving as your strengths partner. I'm serving as someone who can really help extract the goodness from you and help you figure out what door you want to go through, because there's lots of doors, right? There's lots of doors that you can take, different paths you can take on your journey. And, I'm definitely here to help support you in that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Karen. So yeah, I would just encourage our listeners, Karen and I are sharing our lives with you. We're being vulnerable with you. Really, the goal is that, if we just want to open up, and our hope here is that by us opening up, sharing our experience, sharing some of the things that we've learned along the way, that could help someone out there. So please, we encourage you to do the same. Definitely drop any comments in the chat if there's anything that has worked for you, if there's any wisdom, knowledge that you have that could help others. Please, 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 we'd love to hear from you. And until next time, let your radiance shine.
Yes, thank you so much, Lizzie. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And have a great day, great rest of your life. All right, take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening, and remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your purpose awaits. Like, share, and subscribe to stay radiant.